working with a strange lighting situation.
It's always hard to film inside the SCAMP. We need just a whole sunroof on top, and then we'd have better lighting. Welcome back to the SCAMP. It's been a minute. We've been busy doing a lot of awesome, huge renovation projects on the SCAMP. What?
Awesome, huge renovation.
Well, they're very exciting.
I know, they are very exciting.
Before we jump in, we do want to give a disclaimer to say that this is not supposed to be a tutorial of any kind. We haven't yet done any of this work because we are living in this full time and we don't have the room to store all the tools, but we did have an opportunity to do all this at my parents' house, so we took advantage and tackled the biggest projects that are the hardest to do on the road.
To the best of our ability. So again, this may not be the best way to tackle everything, and we're totally aware of that, but it's working great.
The biggest thing, and probably the most luxurious thing, is our brand new bed. It's an 8-inch memory foam mattress that we picked up at Walmart. To cut the mattress, I made a template of a bunch of pieces of paper that I taped together. I put the old cushions on top of those pieces of paper, I cut it out, brought it into the SCAMP to make sure that it fit perfect. Then I brought that back into the house and took off all the covers of the mattress and traced the template onto the mattress directly. Then I used an electric turkey cutter? Is that what it is? What's it called?
I think so.
Like a carving knife? And cut the foam. We've done this before with a 3-inch piece of memory foam. I think we used a saw. What did we do?
Maybe even scissors. It was miserable. It looked terrible.
This tool, I think, might be better advertised as a mattress cutter, a foam mattress cutter, than a turkey carver. It made really quick work of this project. This is the zip-on mattress cover that came with the mattress. What I did was I put it back on. I made sure to keep the start and end of the zipper on the curved side because this is the part of the cover that we're going to cut. I kind of made it a little tight and I traced the edge here where the curve is. I did that on both sides, and on one side I cut it, and that is this side. So it's currently inside out, and I'm going to sew this long flap to the cut side to make a really terrible looking but functional mattress cover that you can zip on and off. I'm doing it inside out so that the seams stay on the inside. The runner stitch is done. I just created pleats here to get that extra corner fabric up, and it turned out okay. Now I'm gonna cut off all this excess here, and I started from the middle and went out just to make sure it was a little bit more even than, I don't know. And now I'm doing this stitch, poke in, and then I go through my hole. And then it grabs it like that, and it looks kind of like a baseball. I don't know a whole lot about sewing, but I feel like 2 layers of hand-sewn stitches will be enough to keep this mattress cover on. I just made sure to take it off very carefully before putting it back on, and it worked out really well, and I was very proud of the end result.
I think you did beautiful work.
To go with this new bed, we chose to buy some Dry-Dek. It's like what you would put on in a locker room floor. It lifts the bed up about 1/4 of an inch, and that was recommended to us by our friend Lindsay.
And it breathes really well. There's channels all the way through it so that air can pass underneath it and dry it out. We did a number of other little things inside the SCAMP, but the majority of the big stuff was outside, so let's talk about that.
We replaced the axle.
This was a long time coming. The torsion axle is sort of like a tube with a rubber gasket of sorts in it, and after 30 years of use, that rubber gasket was all oxidized and corroded, so it didn't really actuate very much. So we decided to go ahead and replace our old axle with a new torsion axle directly from SCAMP. And then we had a shop in Kansas City install it for us. And they did a great job. And with the torsion axle, we also had them add a 2-inch receiver on the back of the SCAMP in case we want to put a bike rack or gear storage or something of that sort on the back. In our experience, the clearance on the SCAMP has been plenty. We have a little bit more clearance on the SCAMP than we do on the Subaru even. So we didn't go with any taller axle, but if we do want to increase the clearance in the future, we can get slightly larger tires. We did not replace the tires. We did replace the wheels with 5-lug wheels to go on the new 5-lug hub because those are a lot easier to find. If you guys have suggestions on good tires for off-road campers, let us know. Because I would like to be able to gas them down a little bit so that they can absorb more shock. But the air in the tire is what holds the weight. So if you gas them down, then they're able to carry less payload because the air is cushioning the weight. So I don't really know what the best solution for that would be. So if you have suggestions there, let us know.
Moving on to the frame. Unrusting the frame is a pain in the axle.
I think it's perfect.
We used steel brushes, steel wool, sandpaper to try to scrape off as much of the rust on the frame as we could. But the SCAMP was only lifted up about 1.5 feet on these little step things that we had. So we did the best that we could given the tools that we had. Most of the rust was just surface rust. The actual frame seemed like it was in really good shape.
Which was surprising given the hell that we put it through.
We painted over it using a high rust Rust-Oleum Primer. And on top of that, used a black Rust-Oleum Paint. And it looks so good now.
And hopefully that'll protect it for quite a while.
Yeah, we'll see. It, of course, could have been done better by professionals.
But if we could have lifted the SCAMP up off of the frame, but I'm not even sure that that's
and used
possible.
power tools like grinding tools to get the surfaced rust off, that would have been better.
Like whatever this tool is called, that's one we would have used.
We'll keep you updated on how that's looking over time. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Well, given that we hadn't done anything to it for as long as we had it, and it was still fine, then I think after treating it well, it'll do great for the next 5-10 years. This is our new tongue box. Our old tongue box was made for the battery that came with the SCAMP, and the lid had at some point blown off and we didn't have it. So I cut off the old tongue box. We went with this plastic toolbox over a dedicated tongue box because the metal tongue boxes are generally super heavy, and I want to keep the tongue weight as light as possible. This is a project that I started in the morning thinking that I could knock it out in an hour or so, but it ended up being quite the bear to tackle. If I would have had any of the right tools, I don't think it would have been that much of a problem, like an angle grinder or something. I used every tool available in our arsenal to tackle this, and eventually got it done, but it took way longer than I anticipated. Yeah, great job. Cool. Good Lord. Okay, the easy project for the day is done. Okay, should we do the insulation underneath now? For the underbelly insulation, we went with a 1-inch closed self foam, and we chose this because the bottom of the SCAMP is actually pretty flat, so we could adhere different panels underneath of it. And this is a pretty simple solution, and if it doesn't end up working or if we need to clean something up, it's pretty easy to take each panel off and then get to the underside of the SCAMP. This was one of the only options we really had available given that we didn't have a lift or proper tools, but even so, I think this is one of the best solutions that I've seen. We decided not to put the insulation on the inside floor of the SCAMP because it's already too short for me, the ceiling height is, so eliminating an extra inch or two would be miserable.
But under all of the storage bins in the SCAMP, we do have a layer of Reflectix that helps a little bit, but not nearly as much as the new insulation that we have now. We bought this foam board at Home Depot. We measured it with a tape measure.
23 1/4.
Cut it to size. We realized that our screws that we bought for this project were too long. We didn't know how thick the subfloor was, so we compensated by using a bunch of washers with the screws, and it worked out fine.
We realized that this isn't the ideal solution, but we really didn't want to go back to Home Depot that day.
However, we did the next day, and we finished the project with the right size screws.
We would still like to go in with some sort of foam and seal around the edges. So far we just used Gorilla Tape to seal it all in, but we wanted to make sure that this was going to work and that it made a real difference before we really made it permanent.
And it has.
Yeah.
Whoa. It's made a huge difference.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's probably one of the biggest, aside from the bed, one of the biggest improvements that we made.
Mm-hmm. Eventually we would like to spray some sort of underbelly liner on it to really seal it in, but we would have to jack the SCAMP up to do that, and I would really like to replace the subfloor with a composite material before we seal all of that in so that we get all the potential for rot out of the way. I found this stuff online that I've been looking for since we got the SCAMP. It's called
Starboard.
Yeah, it's called Starboard, which is a clever play on words because it's used for boats, like the starboard side. It's a composite or plastic plywood replacement, and you can do all sorts of things with it. It's super useful. So eventually I would like to pull out the subfloor on the SCAMP and replace it with this composite material, because then it would never ever rot and the SCAMP would be permanently future proof.
That's cool. Stay tuned.
Yeah,
maybe
for another day.
One day. A lot of people often suggest that we get a skirt to put around the base of the SCAMP in the winter, and while that would be hugely effective, we just don't have the space to be storing that type of material as we travel or in the off-season when it's not winter. When there is snow on the ground, though, we do pack that up around the SCAMP and it helps. The biggest, most obvious, and most controversial maintenance that we did is the fiberglass outer shell of the SCAMP.
We researched this a lot, and the most common solution is just to polish and wax the exterior, but we didn't do that because our gel coat was so oxidized that it would just keep powdering off as you rubbed it. So we decided to use Zepp floor polish to seal it in. And it's effectively like a clear coat, but it's super easy to apply, and you apply it in a number of super thin coats. This is not what this stuff is made for, but a lot of people have used it on their campers and it's worked well. And it's the simplest way that we could effectively apply a clear coat.
But we have not seen how it lasts in the conditions that we put our SCAMP in. So we will keep you posted on this. It's likely that it will come off. There's no UV protection, so it's likely that it will yellow.
But you can strip it off pretty easily. So if anything does go wrong with it, we can strip it off. Maybe give it a little while before you do this to your camper to see if it works over time with ours.
Sorry, SCAMP enthusiasts, they're gonna be pissed.
I had looked for LED replacements for the SCAMPs running in taillights for a while, and I couldn't find an exact replacement for them. I went ahead and ordered the closest thing that I could find, and we made a little bit of modifications to them to make them work. The taillights themselves are a sort of circular housing with a rubber grommet on the outside, and they're made to be inserted into a body panel or like for Jeep headlights. So we could have cut a big circle in the back of the SCAMP to insert the headlights into with the rubber housing, but I didn't want to make a big cut into the SCAMP. So instead we took the original taillights, and with the help of Elsa's dad Terry, who is the man, he cut perfect circles to fit the new taillight housing into the old taillight unit. So now we can use the old taillight to mount the new fixture inside.
I Plasti Dipped the old taillights black so that they would match really well with the new fixtures.
I think they look awesome.
They look amazing. It's so cool. What a simple project that seemed for you. I had no idea you had any experience with electrical anything. It seemed like that was
it's
no
pretty
big
simple.
deal.
Well, there's only 3 wires and I just winged it and it worked.
Dealing with wiring and electricity is a little scary, but in this situation, it was so simple that I could just kind of guess my way through it, and it worked great. After I tested to make sure that the wiring was working, we peeled up the old rat fur and the Reflectix to get to the body panels, and we wired in everything permanently, and then we went ahead and caulked them in so that they wouldn't leak through the holes. And they're working great so far. They're super bright. Wow, they're so bright. Awesome.
As I said, I have become a Plasti Dipper.
Plasti Dipist.
Plasti Dippy. I didn't know what Plasti Dip was before this. Plasti Dip is a rubberized spray paint often used on cars. When we bought the Subaru, it actually had Plasti Dip on the wheels and looked really cool, but since it's all worn off. I washed the wheels of the Subaru and the SCAMP really well with soap and water. Then I took some rubbing alcohol and went over that. Then I did about 4 to 6 coats of Plasti Dip on everything, letting it dry for a half an hour in between. A perk of Plasti Dip is if for some reason we didn't like it, or if we messed up, didn't get it clean enough, you can just peel the Plasti Dip off. So it wasn't like we're working with a spray paint that's permanent.
And if you overspray, you can just take a rag and wipe it off, which we ended up having to do.
I went a little Plasti crazy. I Plasti Dipped a few panels on the car, and then I decided to also Plasti Dip the belly band of the SCAMP. I had never seen this done before, and I don't know how long it'll last, but it's an aluminum belly band, and this paint is made to go on aluminum rims. And if it messes up or gets scratched or something, all we have to do is touch it up. I think it looks pretty cool.
I do too. I think all of our things will be perpetually way cooler now that Elsa knows what Plasti Dip is.
Well, shoot, everything's gonna turn black before we know it. So that's the SCAMP. It's been a long time coming, but we finally got a roof box for the Subaru.
I am so excited. The one that we went with is a Thule Force XT in a size large. So there are different sizes available, but this was the best one that we could find for the Subi. It actually fits both of our snowboards and a kayak.
Our Archery Kit.
Yeah, and it's got plenty of vertical space. It's incredible. I don't know how we lived without this, and we couldn't have our snowboarding gear with us if we didn't have this. When we bought the Subaru, it had been in a rear end collision of some sort, so the back taillight and bumper were messed up, so we got a slightly better deal.
We finally replaced that taillight, and Surgeline Tuning in Portland actually popped out the back bumper a little bit for us. We bought some touch-up paint to apply to it, but then we came out to Colorado and it's too cold to apply it, so we'll apply it one day.
I got a rear wiper delete for the Subi. It's just a little aluminum disc that plugs up the old rear wiper hole because our wiper motor had burned out from having the bikes on the back of the car.
Subi's looking good.
She is.
Back in the SCAMP, we did some work on the door.
Our door has been super drafty ever since we got it because the SCAMP is sort of curved, and over time the door relaxes and becomes more and more flat. So we've tried a few different ways to seal it up with different foams and stuff, and this is our latest attempt. I took these, like crank screws, I can't remember what they're called, and put a piece of paracord on here to pull the corners of the door in, and then we used this expandable foam to seal up the rest of the cracks. And now there's no draft coming through, and this will expand a little bit more over time and seal it up better. Our roof vent is an odd size because it's actually an escape hatch so that you can climb out of there in the event of being locked in, I guess. They don't make the plastic cover for them anymore in this size, so I had to duct tape this one again, and we could have fiberglassed it or something, but this is what I did. And I did it like 2 years ago and it held up fine, so I just replaced the duct tape one more time and we'll see how this goes. When we were traveling a while back, our vent crank fell off and vanished and we were never able to find it. So I sent the measurements to our friend Trevor and he found a replacement at a hardware store. Thanks, Trev. You're the best.
What are you crying for? We've done a number of tours of the SCAMP throughout our various different seasons and years that we've been living in the SCAMP. I'm curious if you guys would be interested in a new and updated tour, or if you're solid on all the rest of the tours that we had. Let us know in the comments below.
And how much detail would you want us to go into? Like, how long should a tour be?
Do you want to see what we have in each drawer?
Right. Do we geek out on all the tools that we actually have with us? Like, how deep into it do we go?
What do you want to know?
Yeah.
But until then, we're out here. We're finally back in Colorado, and it just feels like a major exhale and release to be back out in nature. We're in a really, really beautiful spot, and we are reconnecting.
And finding our rhythm again. It's great.
Feels good.
Nature is alive and well and rocking out here, and we are loving it. Kamp too. He's been doing great. There's plenty of snow, so he's been feeling good and rolling around in it.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.